Hey gang, East Coast Lumberjack here, Rod Cumberland. And thanks for checking out my channel in this video. This video is going to be specifically on what is the advantage or disadvantage of the size of your handle. For example, this is a store-bought handle, and you can see it's really rugged. It's about, we'll do a little bit of measurements here today. It's over an inch, about an inch and a quarter thick. Okay, but see, in order to, and a lot of people are making handles this big now, you know, because it feels big and tough and strong, and you think this is going to outlast any other handle I have. And back in the day, when we used to, back when the axe was king, basically 100 years ago, handles were really thin. And of course, one of my handles that I like to make is the vintage Moore. And the vintage Moore handle is a very, very thin handle. Now, we would all think that typically the bigger handle, the stronger, ruggeder handle, is going to outlast a really, really thin handle. And I don't believe that's true. And I think that because of years of experience messing around with axes. However, we're going to play around a little bit here today. We're going to bust some stuff up, okay? And I'm going to wreck a few handles. And of course, when you make handles, you can afford to wreck a few here and there to test your theories out, to say, okay, is that really the way it is or not? Now, a vintage handle is a beautiful thing. Okay, they're very thin. Here's a nice thin vintage handle. It's ash. Had me one in here for a bit. Actually, I think it's yellow birch. This one here is yellow birch handle, but it's really thin. Now, thick versus thin handle. This one here is under an inch. It's about 3/4 of an inch wide. Now, I would say anything half to 3/4 of an inch wide is a thin handle. Anything over 3/4 of an inch, upwards of inch and a half, that's a very thick handle. Okay, very big handle. And through all the testing that I've done, messing around, one thing you have to remember about the axes is the smallest, wherever the smallest place is on the axe, that's going to be taking the most pressure, the most force. And typically that occurs at the base of the axe head. So wherever your axe head eventually rests, wherever this eventually rests, that's where the most stress and strain on your handle is. Now, what people do if you have a large handle, axe eyes are all about, and I've probably made, I don't know, 3,000 handles, 4,000 handles, I don't know, I gotta add them up sometime, but I've made a few handles. And in the last couple of years, thanks to a lot of people that watch this, I've sent handles all around the world. And by and large, the largest eye I have ever had is about an inch. Actually, inch and a quarter was the largest one. But even if it is an inch and a quarter, most axes are down around 3/4 of an inch. So even if you have this big wide handle, you eventually have to narrow it in. Now, I've talked to people about this before. If you look at the axes that are hung in Australia, New Zealand, all of our racing axe handles, you'll see that there's a nice smooth transition. There's not these big shoulders up here at the top. Now, some guys like that, but I'll tell you, and you can tell from this here, this handle came out of an axe. I replaced it because I didn't like it. The guy wanted a nice handle. So you can see a couple of things. Number one, you can see where the axe is bumping up against the rest of the handle, okay? Now that causes a natural stress point in the axe, okay? Same here up front. So when you take that like we normally do, and you tap your head on, and of course you tap your head on just by tapping the bottom of the handle, and that'll just drive the axe head up on. When you do that a lot, and you have a handle that's a little bit larger than what your eye is, you're always going to get these stress points. And I have had guys bring me back handles that are busted up because they've split along these fracture points that have been made in the axe by the axe head bumping down against that shoulder. Now, I will say the more you can gradually slope this off here, the better it is. The less chance it's going to fracture here. But eventually it will fracture. That's why on all of our competition handles, it's nice and you can't even see a shoulder here. Okay, it's nice and smooth. So I've done a couple of things. I've got this handle here. I'd love to break. And then I've got one that I made. I've got actually a couple I made. One here that's actually less than 3/4 of an inch. It's what I call a vintage handle. I didn't finish it, of course. And then I have this one here. It's all about 1 1/8 inches, and it narrows down here to about 3/4 of an inch. So I've got these handles here, and we want to see, because what happens is when you put your, I'm not sure if I can do this with the rubberized jaws on or not, so I'm gonna take them off. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna set the handles in my vise, and I'm gonna tighten it up as your axe head would be sitting on the top of the handle. Okay, so it's on there now. Now, if we move this back and forth, and you'll be able to see this, I set it up this way so that you can see what's going on. But as I give that, you'll see that there's, well, first of all, there's a little bit of movement in my vise. Okay, but then you'll see there's some flex in the handle, and most of that flex is occurring down here. So the beauty, the beauty of a nice stiff handle like this is, this part is stiff, okay, because it's such a large handle. All your effort is down here, and let's see how far we can bend this before it actually breaks, and we'll try to watch here on the cupboard. Okay. Oh, you heard it crack right there. Okay, so I got to here. Okay, and it's starting to break right there. So that's, I think that's that line right there. Okay, so on this knot, it's starting to break. Okay, so the handle's not moving much. Okay, it's cracking again. So once I get beyond that, okay, there it is. It's busted. Okay, and of course, as we know, it's not going to bust. It's not going to bust along here, because of course this here is the toughest part of the axe. It's going to bust up here at the eye. Okay, so that's where it's going to break. And we know that. Now again, you might say, well, I don't ever twist my handle that way. I'm always swinging straight on. And if you are, that's great. But nonetheless, that is always going to be the smallest point of your handle, so that's going to be the weakest part of the wood. Now, I'm really curious to try out my handle. So this is what I would call a vintage handle. Now you're going to notice a few things about this. First of all, you're going to notice there's a lot more give in this handle. Okay, look how far we can bring that, and nothing's breaking at all. Okay, we're past this knot here quite a ways. Okay, I wonder how far it's going to take before it actually does break. I gotta leave it so you can see where we're at on the cupboard. Okay, right there. So it was down here quite a bit farther than what the other handle was before it started to break, and that's because there's a lot of give along this handle. So what's happening? What's happening is the stiffness of the other handle is causing the pressure to be put right here. The flex in the rest of this handle is actually allowing it to bend more before we get to the breaking point down here. Okay, and that's just straight physics. So it hasn't broken the whole way through yet. We'll go a little bit more. Okay, we can almost. Okay, right? That was pretty amazing. Okay, and the other thing you'll notice is where it broke. Okay, so this broke along the length of the handle. Okay, actually it broke right along one of these grains right here. You can see that grain pattern. So it broke along that before it actually broke. And look at this. That's ash. See, a lot of people that get a wow in their handle say, "Oh my goodness, I get a wow in the handle. You know, the handle's not straight." Don't panic. You can actually, I can actually put that in there and straighten that bend out. Okay. So, and of course we know that in Canada because we use ash in snowshoes and a lot of things where we actually steam the ash and you can bend it around in a circle and it'll stay there. So ash is a very, very cool wood that way. So I think it's called the mode of elasticity. It's pretty amazing on ash. So that went a long ways till it broke. Now, this one here, I want to measure these two axes because this one here is 0.8 of an inch. Okay, this one's 0.9 of an inch. Okay, so now what I've done is, this is a little bit wider here, but it's a big thick handle down here. So, I'm going to bust another one. So, this is ash again, and it's got a fair bit of flex in it, you'll see here, which is a great thing about using ash wood in an axe handle. I haven't had the heart yet to use hickory. maybe I should try busting up some hickory here in a bit, but it may not even break, in all honesty. Actually, this one here, this first one we busted, it is a hickory. Okay, so we have busted a hickory. So I might get the foot right up on here to come after it. Okay, no, what what that's going to do is going to break my bench. And I'm not going to break my bench for you. But anyways, the first two I think showed you exactly what I wanted to show you, is that a vintage handle, a nice thin handle, is actually going to give you a lot more flex and less chance of busting up at the eye. Now, the other thing that causes handles to break is when you hit here. All right, now this comes down to how you use an axe. So, a lot of this, and any of us that have split a lot of firewood, I've split firewood my entire life, we know that this is where your handle gets beat up. So, a few tricks from the East Coast Lumberjack. I've seen a few things in the past that helps that from busting up. Number one, shorten your handle. Simplest solution there is. If you use a shorter handle, you're more accurate hitting your wood. But of course, a long handle and a splitting axe, 32, 33 inches, is what you want to get a lot of centripetal force. So what my dad used to do, he would take a piece of wire, just hay wire, put it up inside right here where your axe head meets the axe handle. There's a little bit of space there. He would stick it up in there, and then he would wind that wire around. Okay, he would keep going around and around the handle, keep it nice and tight the whole way around there. He'd come down about 2 inches. So he'd use a little bit of wire, probably be about 4 feet of wire to go around that far. And then he would use his electrical tape and then tape that up so it wasn't flopping around on him. So what happened is when you missed your head and hit there, of course, the steel, the metal in the wire is taking all of that abuse. Now, another thing I've seen a German buddy of mine do is he actually took a piece of steel, and it was basically a sheet of galvanized metal. And what he did is he shaped it for right here on his axe. He curved it around, and then when he was putting the axe head on, he slid the head down over top of that sleeve, that metal sleeve. So when he hit it here, of course, the metal was taking the abuse, and it also was sitting, the head was sitting on that as well. So it was up in there, wedged in with the rest of the axe head. So those are 3 ways of getting around the abuse. And you can see this here was a splitting axe. You can see the abuse that it's taken right here, okay? And we all know that. Anybody that split wood knows that that's where your handle is going to take abuse. And after a while, of course, the weight of the head, that striking is going to bust it. Now, the other thing, and I think I've mentioned this before, when we're doing standing block chop or underhand chop, when you're chopping a log, if you don't clean out the wood, wherever your axe is swinging, the wood along the handle in your chopping surface has got to be out of there before you move down the log. So if we're chopping a big round log and you're on top of it, you want to clean out the top wood first. Because if you clean out the bottom first, this part is going to hit the wood that you haven't chopped, because the axe head is going in deeper at the bottom. So always clean the wood out closest to you first. Same as when you're doing a standing block chop. Always clean the wood out closest to you before you reach across to the farther wood, especially on bigger wood. Because if you hit this part of your axe, which happened at UNB, the young fellow was chopping the far part of his wood, his axe head went past there, the handle hit, and of course the weight of that axe is going to break your handle. All right? So that's a fair bit on axes and hang 'em. So that is why I'm not a shoulder guy, okay? And I know Buck and Billy love shoulders, and no more power to them. if you're a good aim, and Buck and Billy does a pile of splitting. So if you have a good aim, you don't have to worry much about that because you're likely not going to bust it. But for the rest of us, that I split 6-quarter wood a year, but it's only for a month. I do a lot of training, and I would hope that my aim is not bad, but I still miss. Okay, we all miss. So for that reason, and again, just because I know it improves the strength on the handle if you have a thinner handle, and you improve your flexibility, not necessarily the strength. This handle is stronger than the thinner handles, but of course it focuses all your torque down here where your handle's the smallest. Doesn't matter how big you make this down here, and of course this is really notorious on mauls. Okay, when I get large fencing mauls and sledgehammers, they have these little tiny eyes. Okay, and I don't like tiny eyes because the size of the eye tells you how much strength you're going to have in your handle. So you make your handle as big as you want. If it comes down to the fact that you've only got an inch in there for your eye, that's where the strength matters. Okay, so the old East Coast Lumberjack is telling you vintage handles are good. Don't be worried about breaking them. You'll likely get a lot more wear and tear out of it because you don't have the what's it called? No, fulcrums were pivots, but you don't have the length, and you don't have the strength out here to put as much pressure down here as what you may think. You're going to get a lot more bow in your handle. Okay, so that's my unscientific way of telling you that basically a thinner handle, I think, is a little bit better axe. A little bit of better axe handle because you're not going to bust it as easily. You're not going to be able to put as much pressure and force down here at the eye as you would with a handle that's thinner. Okay, so it took us, and you saw it took us a long ways until that finally busted. And you're probably surprised because this handle here was 1.25 inches wide. This one here is only 3/4 of an inch wide. So a lot more give. So hopefully that answers the question once for all. What's the toughest one? If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please subscribe. And we'll be back in a bit with more axe news. See ya.